Hey everyone, welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told as Podcast. And today we're going to dive into something you use almost every day,
Yeah.
but probably never really think about.
Mm-hmm.
The remote control.
That little device that saves us so many trips to the TV or lets us be honest. Stay
Yeah,
comfortably sprawled out on the couch.
exactly. But get this, the remote control has a history that is far more adventurous
Oh, actually,
than you might think.
it's not in the living room.
Okay,
Its origins are in warfare and technology of the late 19th century.
okay, unpack this for us. How on
Oh,
earth
yeah.
do torpedoes and comfy TV watching connect?
It all comes down to the need to control things from a distance. Imagine
Uh,
trying to steer a torpedo toward a target without putting an operator at risk.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So these early remote control systems were all about military applications.
Primarily, yes, and they were a far cry from the sleek remotes we have today.
Yeah.
They often involved wires, levers, and complex mechanisms.
Yeah. Radio waves entered the picture, right? I read about this device
Yes.
called the mystery control.
The Philco Mystery Control, released in 1939, this was a game changer
Okay.
because it was the first wireless remote for a consumer device, specifically a radio.
So this was the first time someone could change the station without getting up.
You got it might seem simple now, but back then, using radio waves to control a device remotely was revolutionary. And you know what's really fascinating?
Why?
This innovation paved the way for the TV remotes that we know and love, or sometimes love to hate today.
Hold on. Before we jump into the world of television,
Yeah.
can we take a detour back to those early military remotes?
Yeah.
Is there a specific example that really highlights the ingenuity of those early systems?
Well, one that stands out is the use of radio control and the development of unmanned aerial vehicles, or what we now call drones.
Oh, wow.
In the early 20th century, there were several experiments with remotely controlled aircraft, primarily for military reconnaissance purposes.
So drones have been around a lot longer than most people realize.
Much longer, these early drones were often quite rudimentary, but they laid the foundation for the sophisticated unmanned aircraft systems that we see today.
That's incredible. It just goes to show how seemingly unrelated inventions can have a ripple effect across different fields. But you're right.
Yeah.
We need to get back to the TV remote. What happened after the Philco mystery control? Did people immediately start controlling their TVs with remotes?
Not quite. It took a few more years, and there were some, let's say, interesting attempts along the way.
Right.
In the 1950s, as television became increasingly popular, the demand for a convenient way to control it grew.
Right. I know the first TV remotes were anything but convenient.
You're telling me the first attempt was Zenith's Lazy Bones in 1950?
Okay.
This remote actually used wires to connect to the TV.
So not exactly lazy if you're tethered to the television set.
Not at all, but it was a step in the right direction. That in 1955, Eugene Pauly, also from Zenith, invented the Flashmatic,
Okay.
the first truly wireless TV remote.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The Flashmatic used beams of light to control the TV.
It did. You could point it at the TV and use it to change channels, adjust the volume, and even mute the sound. It was a groundbreaking invention.
I bet. But how reliable were those light beams? Could you accidentally change the channel with a lamp or sunlight?
Well, that was one of the Flashmatic's quirks. It could be a bit sensitive to other light sources, leading to some unintentional channel changes.
Oh, no.
Not to mention, you had to be positioned in a pretty specific spot for it to work properly.
Sounds like a recipe for some family arguments during prime time.
Uh-huh.
But even with its limitations, the Flashmatic was a major leap forward. What came next?
Zenith, always at the forefront of remote control innovation, came back swinging in 1956 with the Space Command.
Okay.
This remote used ultrasound technology, those high-frequency sounds we can't hear, to control the TV.
I've heard stories about these. Some people, and even dogs, could actually hear the clicks from those ultrasonic remotes, right?
Yes. It wasn't uncommon for dogs to perk up their ears or even start barking when someone used the remote.
Oh my gosh.
It's quite funny to think about it now.
I could only imagine those early days of remote control technology sound like a wild ride full of innovative ideas and some hilarious mishaps.
They were, but each invention built upon the previous one,
Yeah.
leading to more sophisticated and reliable systems.
This is exactly the kind of mind-blowing deep dive I love.
Yeah.
And speaking of diving deeper,
Uh-huh.
if you're enjoying this journey through the history of the remote control, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't want to miss out on all the other amazing stories we have lined up for you here on Tell Me More.
There's so much more to explore, from the invention of the transistor and its impact on remote controls to the rise of universal remotes
Right.
and the fascinating world of smart home technology.
All right, back to the story. The Space Command was a big hit, but the evolution of the remote didn't stop there. What happened next in this technological saga?
Well, the invention of the transistor in the mid-20th century revolutionized electronics in general.
Mhm.
It was a game changer for remote control technology, making remotes smaller, cheaper to produce, and much more reliable.
This was a turning point, wasn't it? Smaller, more affordable remotes meant they could become a standard feature in more and more homes.
Exactly. It also opened up possibilities for more complex features and functionality.
Yeah.
Before transistors, remotes were pretty basic, but with transistors, they could handle more complex commands and become more versatile.
This is where we see the transition from those clunky single-purpose remotes to the multi-button remotes we're more familiar with today.
You got it.
Yeah.
And there's one development in the 1970s that really pushed remote control design to the next level:
What we got?
the emergence of teletext in Europe.
Teletext, that rings a bell, but I need a refresher. What exactly was it?
Imagine an early version of the internet delivered through your television.
Oh, okay.
Teletext offered access to news, weather, sports scores, even basic games, all transmitted through television signals.
That's pretty ingenious for the time. But how did this affect the development of the remote control?
Well, to access all this information,
Right.
you needed a remote that could do more than just change channels. You needed to be able to enter numbers, navigate menus, and send specific commands.
So the complexity of the information being accessed drove the need for a more complex remote control.
Precisely, this led to the development of remotes with more buttons, number pads,
Yeah.
and ultimately paved the way for the infrared or IR technology that most remotes use today.
IR technology.
Yeah.
It's the same technology that's still used in most TV remotes today, right?
Yes.
It's amazing how a relatively old technology has remained so dominant.
It is. IR technology proved to be reliable, relatively inexpensive to implement, and it worked well for the types of commands most people needed to send to their TVs and other devices.
So it's a practical choice that made sense for both manufacturers and consumers.
Precisely. And while there have been attempts to introduce alternative technologies like Bluetooth infrared, remains the dominant force in TV remote controls even today.
It's a testament to how effective a simple and reliable technology can be.
Absolutely. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best.
Well, after that fascinating detour into the world of ad-meeting remotes,
Uh-huh.
let's continue our journey through remote control history. What happened after IR technology took over?
Well, as you might imagine, things didn't stay static for long. The 1980s saw the rise of cable television, and with it, an explosion in the number of channels available.
Ah, so this is where we start to encounter the infamous problem of remote control overload.
Suddenly people had multiple devices, each with its own remote control, the VCR, the cable box.
Yeah.
It was a lot to manage.
I can imagine trying to keep track of all those remotes must have been a nightmare.
It was.
Searching for the right one under couch cushions, accidentally hitting the wrong button. It sounds like a recipe for frustration.
It definitely was, and this is where the next major innovation in remote control history comes in: the universal remote.
Ah, the universal remote, the hero we all needed.
Exactly. The concept of a single remote that could control multiple devices from different manufacturers was revolutionary.
It seems so obvious now,
Yeah.
but back then it must have felt like a game changer.
It absolutely was. The first universal remotes were a bit cloney and required a lot of programming,
Yeah.
but they paved the way for the sleek, user-friendly universal remotes we have today.
So the universal remote helped us tame the chaos of multiple remotes.
Yes.
But the story doesn't end there, does it? What's the next chapter in the evolution of the remote control?
Well, in the 21st century, we see the convergence of remote control technology with other major technological trends,
Okay.
specifically the rise of smartphones and the Internet of Things.
This is where things start to get really futuristic.
It's not uncommon to use your smartphone as a universal remote.
Right.
Many smartphones now have built-in IR blasters, essentially turning them into high-tech remote controls.
I love using my phone as a remote.
Yeah.
So convenient to have everything in one place.
Exactly. Plus, smartphone remotes often have additional features like voice control and the ability to browse program guides
Yeah.
or control smart home devices.
So we've gone from controlling a single device to controlling our entire entertainment systems and now potentially our entire homes.
Right, and it all started with the desire to control a torpedo remotely over a century ago.
Wow.
It's amazing how one invention can spark a chain reaction of innovation that leads to such transformative changes in how we live our lives.
It really highlights the interconnectedness of technological advancements
Yeah.
and how seemingly unrelated inventions can have a profound impact on each other.
Absolutely. And this is just the beginning of the story.
Okay, before we dive into the future of remote controls, let's take a quick break.
That's good.
We'll be back in a moment to continue our exploration of this fascinating technology.
All right. Welcome back. We were just discussing how smartphones are becoming the ultimate universal remote, controlling everything from our TVs to our smart homes.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about how far we've come. But I'm curious, beyond entertainment systems and smart homes,
Yeah.
are there any other surprising applications of remote control technology?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
One area you might not immediately think of is photography.
Photography.
Remote controls have been used in photography for decades, especially for long exposure shots,
Oh, yeah.
where even the slightest movement can ruin the image.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You need a way to trigger the shutter without actually touching the camera.
Exactly. And these days, remote controls for cameras have become even more sophisticated. Many cameras, especially action cameras and DSLRs,
Right.
have Wi-Fi capabilities allowing you to control them remotely from your smartphone or tablet.
So you can set up the perfect shot frame in exactly how you want and then trigger the shutter from a distance,
Yeah.
all without having to physically touch the camera.
Precisely. It's a game changer for photographers, especially those who specialize in wildlife photography, astrophotography, or any situation where being close to the subject could disrupt the scene or introduce unwanted camera shake.
Speaking of disrupting the scene, remember how we talked about the blab-off,
Uh-huh.
that wired remote designed to mute commercials?
Ah, yes. The ingenious invention for adverse viewers.
Well, it turns out that even in the early days of remote control technology,
Right.
people were already thinking about how to customize their viewing experience.
It's a fascinating example of how user needs and desires have always driven innovation in this field.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that technology is not just about technical advancements.
Yeah.
It's about how those advancements are used to solve problems and improve our lives.
Couldn't agree more. Now, you mentioned video games earlier.
Yes.
We can't talk about remote controls without delving into the evolution of the video game controller, can we?
Oh, definitely not. And video game controllers are, in essence, highly specialized remote controls.
Right?
And their evolution is just as fascinating as that of the TV remote.
Absolutely. Think about the difference between those simple joysticks of the early arcade games
Yeah.
and the immersive motion sensing controllers we have now.
It's mind-blowing. And those early video game consoles didn't even have wireless controllers.
Right.
You were tethered to the console with a cord. Can you imagine trying to play a fast-paced action game like that?
Not a recipe for success.
Yeah.
There were some early attempts at wireless controllers,
Yeah.
but they often relied on infrared technology,
Oh,
which,
yeah.
as we discussed, requires a direct line of sight
Right.
that could make for some frustrating gaming experiences, with players constantly adjusting their position to keep the signal strong.
I can only imagine the rage quits.
Yeah.
But thankfully, technology marches on, and eventually more reliable wireless protocols like Bluetooth came along.
Exactly. Bluetooth and other proprietary wireless technologies allowed for much more freedom of movement and responsiveness.
Yeah.
And that paved the way for the motion sensing controllers we see today, like the Wii Remote and the PlayStation Move.
It's incredible to think that we've gone from simple buttons and joysticks
Right.
to controllers that can track our movements in three-dimensional space and provide haptic feedback.
It truly is remarkable, and it's a testament to how far both gaming technology and remote control technology have advanced.
Speaking of advancements,
Yeah.
we've talked about how remote control technology has impacted our entertainment,
Uh-huh.
our homes, and even our hobbies, like photography.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about its influence on a much grander scale, space exploration.
Ah, yes. Remote control technology has played a pivotal role in our ability to explore the cosmos.
I think many people would be surprised to learn just how many space missions rely on remote control.
Absolutely. From the early days of the space race, remote control has been essential for controlling spacecraft robotic probes and rovers exploring distant planets.
It's mind-boggling to think that we can control machines millions of miles away using remote control technology.
It really is. One of the earliest examples that comes to mind is the Lunokhod program, a series of robotic lunar rovers sent to the moon by the Soviet Union in the 1970s.
I've seen pictures of those. They look like something out of a science fiction movie.
Uh-huh.
Weren't they controlled remotely from Earth?
They were a team of operators on Earth used radio signals to control the rover's movements,
Wow.
allowing them to explore the lunar surface, take photographs, and conduct scientific experiments.
That's amazing. Imagine the skill and precision required to maneuver a rover on the moon with a significant time delay in communication.
It was a remarkable feat of engineering and human ingenuity, and the Lunokhod rovers paved the way for more sophisticated rovers like the Mars rovers we have today.
Speaking of Mars rovers, those are some of the most impressive examples of remote control technology in action, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Think about the Curiosity and Perseverance rovers,
Right.
exploring the Martian surface, collecting samples, and sending back incredible images.
Yeah.
All of this is made possible by remote control technology.
It's inspiring to think about how far we've come in our ability to explore space. And it all started with those early experiments in controlling torpedoes remotely.
Yeah.
Who could have predicted that those early inventions would lead us to exploring other planets?
It's a testament to human curiosity, ingenuity, and our persistent desire to push the boundaries of what's possible.
Okay, before we get too carried away with our cosmic adventures,
Yeah.
let's bring things back down to Earth for a moment. We've talked about how remote control technology has impacted our homes, our hobbies, and even space exploration.
Uh-huh.
But I can't help but wonder what the future holds for this ubiquitous technology.
That's a great question, and it's one that's being actively explored and debated by researchers, engineers, and futurists alike. While the traditional remote control with its buttons and infrared signals is still prevalent,
Right.
there are some emerging trends that could drastically change the landscape of how we control our devices.
Okay, spill the beans. What are some of the potential game changers on the horizon?
Well, one of the most significant trends is the rise of voice control. We're already seeing this with smart speakers and virtual assistants,
Yeah.
but it's likely to become even more integrated into our lives in the coming years.
So instead of fumbling for the remote, we might just be able to say,
Right.
turn on the TV or change the channel to ESPN.
Exactly. And it's not just limited to entertainment devices. Imagine being able to control your lights, your thermostat, your appliances, all with simple voice commands.
Yeah, that sounds both incredibly convenient and a little bit like science fiction. Are there any other potential disruptors to the traditional remote control?
Another area that's gaining traction is gesture recognition.
Okay.
Imagine being able to control your TV or your smart home devices with simple hand gestures.
Like something out of a Minority Report movie.
Exactly. While this technology is still in its early stages, it has the potential to revolutionize how we interact with our devices.
It sounds like the future of remote control technology is all about creating more seamless and intuitive ways to control our environment.
That's a great way to put it. The goal is to move beyond those clunky, button-filled remotes and create a more natural and intuitive control experience.
Okay, let's play a little game of future predictions.
Mm-hmm.
What are some other wild possibilities we might see in the realm of remote control technology?
Well, one area that researchers are exploring is brain-computer interfaces.
Oh, hold on. Brain-computer interfaces.
Yeah.
Are we talking about controlling devices with our minds?
Exactly. It sounds like science fiction, but there have been some promising developments in this field while it's still very early days.
Yeah,
Imagine being able to control your devices just by thinking about it.
that's mind-blowing. It would be the ultimate inconvenience and accessibility,
Yeah.
but it also raises some interesting ethical and philosophical questions.
It does. As with any powerful technology, there are important considerations about privacy, security, and responsible use, but the potential benefits are undeniable.
Okay, one more wild prediction. What about using biometric data to control devices?
That's an interesting one. Imagine a device that could adjust the lighting or temperature based on your heart rate or even your mood.
It sounds a bit creepy, but also incredibly personalized and convenient.
It's a good example of how the lines between technology and biology are becoming increasingly blurred.
This is why I love these deep dives. We start with a seemingly simple object like a remote control
Uh-huh.
and end up exploring the frontiers of human ingenuity and the ethical implications of cutting-edge technology.
It's a reminder that even the most mundane objects can have fascinating stories and profound implications for our lives.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, from the earliest torpedo remotes to the potential for mind-controlled devices in the future.
It has been quite a journey through the fascinating and ever-evolving world of remote control technology.
But before we wrap up, there's one more question I have to ask. Given all these incredible advancements, what do you think the fate of the traditional remote control will be? Will it go the way of the dodo, or will it find a way to adapt and survive?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? While it's impossible to predict the future with certainty. I think it's safe to say that the traditional remote control as we know it is likely to undergo some significant transformations in the coming years.
So we're not quite ready to throw those clunky button-filled remotes in the dustbin of history just yet.
Not quite. While new technologies like voice control and gesture recognition are gaining traction,
Right.
they still have some limitations.
Yeah.
And for many people, the familiarity and simplicity of a traditional remote control are hard to beat.
Plus, there's still plenty of devices out there that rely on infrared technology.
Yeah.
So it's unlikely to disappear overnight.
Exactly. But I do think we'll see a shift towards more integrated and intuitive control methods. We might see remotes with fewer buttons, more touchscreens, and better integration with other smart devices.
So a hybrid approach combining the best of the old and the new.
Precisely, the remote control of the future is likely to be a blend of traditional and emerging technologies designed to provide the most seamless and personalized control experience possible.
Now, that's an exciting thought, and it leaves us with plenty to ponder as we continue to navigate this ever-evolving technological landscape. But for now, I think it's time to put down the remote and take a break from our deep dive.
Sounds good to me. We'll be back soon to explore more fascinating stories and delve into the mysteries of the world around us.
Welcome back, listeners. I hope you've enjoyed our journey through the history of the remote control.
It's been quite an adventure, hasn't it? From torpedoes to television and beyond, this little device has had a profound impact on our lives.
Absolutely. And as we've seen, the future of the remote control is still very much in flux. We're on the verge of a new era of control with voice commands, gesture recognition, and maybe even brain-computer interfaces becoming part of our daily lives.
It is exciting to think about the possibilities, but it also makes you wonder, what will become of the traditional remote control? Will it become obsolete, or will it adapt and evolve?
It's hard to say for sure, but I have a feeling the remote control, in some form, will be with us for quite some time after all. There's something satisfying about having a physical object to control our devices, something tangible in a world that's increasingly virtual.
I agree. There's a certain tactile pleasure in pressing a button, a sense of direct control that you don't always get with voice commands or gestures.
Plus, what happens when the Wi-Fi goes out or your smart speaker decides you can't understand your request? Sometimes you just need a simple, reliable button to get things done.
Exactly. And let's not forget about accessibility. For people with certain disabilities, voice control or gesture recognition might not be the most practical or accessible options. A traditional remote control with clearly labeled buttons can be much easier to use.
That's an important point.
Yeah.
Technological advancements should always strive to be inclusive and accessible to everyone.
Absolutely. So, while the future of the remote control might involve more sophisticated technologies, I think there will always be a place for those tried and true buttons and infrared signals.
Perhaps we'll see a blending of the old and the new, a hybrid remote control that incorporates voice-controlled gesture recognition and maybe even some biometric sensors, all while retaining the familiarity and accessibility of traditional buttons.
That's a fascinating idea, a remote control that can adapt to your individual needs and preferences, offering multiple ways to interact with your devices.
It's exciting to think about.
Yeah.
But one thing is for sure, the remote control has come a long way from its humble beginnings, and its journey is far from over.
And who knows what incredible innovations lie ahead. Perhaps we'll one day control our entire world with a thought or wave of the hand. But for now, let's appreciate the little device that brought us countless hours of entertainment, simplified our lives, and continues to evolve in surprising ways.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of remote control technology. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and learned something new along the way.
It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you.
And if you're eager to explore more fascinating stories and delve deeper into the mysteries of technology, culture, and history, be sure to subscribe to Tell Me More Stories Told As podcast. We have a whole queue of captivating topics lined up that you won't want to miss.
Until next time, keep those remotes handy and stay curious.
Happy channel surfing, everyone.